Oliver Decker hadn't planned on throwing a punch that afternoon. But when a man twice, his size, started screaming at a woman in the middle of the grocery store parking lot, he didn't think he moved. "Hey," Oliver stepped between them, his voice louder than he'd expected. "Back off." The man slicked back hair, red face, breath reeking of whiskey, squared up like he wanted a fight. "Who the hell are you?" Oliver didn't flinch. He didn't have time to think about how this could go wrong. His 6-year-old son, Zayden, was 3 feet away with a grocery bag in each arm and wide eyes glued to him. And the woman, the one being yelled at, stood frozen, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse. "I said back off," Oliver repeated, his voice low now. "Dangerous." The man cursed, threw his hands up, and stormed off muttering. Oliver didn't follow. He turned to the woman. She hadn't moved. She looked like she'd just come out of a trance. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentler now. She blinked. Her eyes were a soft brown, wide and still stunned. "Why, yeah, I think so." Then she let out a shaky breath. "Thank you, I didn't even know what to say, She shook her head. "Thank you." Oliver gave a nod, then turned to Zayden. "Come on, buddy, let's get home." Zayden trotted over, balancing the bags like a pro. "That was awesome, Dad," he whispered. Oliver ruffled his hair. "Let's just pretend it never happened." But as he reached his beat-up truck, the woman called out, "Wait." He turned. She hurried over, heels clicking against the pavement. "I didn't get your name." "Oliver," he said. "Oliver Decker." "I'm Rowan," she said, offering her hand. "Rowan Ashford." She was dressed simply jeans, a pale blue blouse. Her hair was pulled into a ponytail, no makeup, no jewelry. If you told him she had $5 to her name, he'd believe it. But there was something about the way she stood even after what just happened. Composed, steady. "Well, thanks again," she said, and for a second her smile flickered. "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did," Oliver said. His eyes dropped to her elbow where it was slightly red. "You should get some ice on that." Rowan nodded. "I'll be fine." Then she looked over at Zayden and smiled. "Hi." Zayden grinned. "Hi, my dad's a superhero." Oliver laughed, embarrassed. "All right, that's enough of that." Rowan's eyes softened. "He's not wrong." Oliver didn't know what to say to that, so he just gave her a wave and drove off. It wasn't the first time Oliver had stepped in to help someone, but it was the first time he couldn't stop thinking about it after. Maybe it was the way Rowan had looked at him. Grateful, but something else too, like she saw straight through him. He didn't have time for that. He barely made rent. He worked construction jobs during the day, delivered groceries at night, and tried to raise a kid who didn't ask too many questions about why his mom left. Romance didn't fit into that. But 3 days later, she showed up again. He was loading drywall into the back of a truck when he heard someone clear their throat. He turned and nearly dropped the panel. "Hey," Rowan said, dressed in a black jacket and dark jeans. "I brought you lunch." He blinked. "What?" She held out a brown paper bag. "Hope you like chicken salad." He stared at it. "You tracked me down to bring me a sandwich." She smiled. "You saved me from a drunk lunatic. It's the least I can do." He took the bag, still confused. "You really didn't have to." "I wanted to," she cut in. "Besides, I thought we could talk, if you're not too busy." He looked over at his boss, who was pretending not to eavesdrop but clearly was. Oliver set the drywall down and gestured to the tailgate. "All right, 10 minutes." They sat, and she handed him a soda from her bag too. "You always deliver thank you lunches in person?" he asked. "Only to men who save me in parking lots." He laughed, then took a bite. It was good, really good. "So what do you do, Rowan?" She hesitated. "I'm in finance." He raised an eyebrow. "That's vague." "I like keeping things private," she said, then added quickly, but not for shady reasons. Just there's a lot of noise around money. People treat you different. He didn't press, he got that. People made assumptions about him all the time. Well, thanks for the sandwich, he said. I mean it. She smiled. You're welcome. They didn't talk long, but before she left, she looked at him and said, I hope I see you again, Oliver. He didn't say anything, but something in his chest tightened. She showed up again, and again, always with a reason, a bag of food, a question about something random, an offer to help fix the broken light above his porch. After the third time, he finally said, Okay, what's going on? Rowan didn't blink. I like you. He stared at her. You don't even know me. I know enough, she said. I know you work hard, you love your kid, you stand up for people, that's more than most. He swallowed hard. Rowan, this isn't a good time in my life. I've got a kid, I'm behind on bills, I'm trying to survive. I'm not asking you for anything, she said, stepping closer. I just want to know you. Zayden peeked out from the doorway then. Dad, is she your girlfriend yet? Rowan laughed and Oliver groaned. Go inside, Z. Zayden grinned and ran off. Rowan looked up at him. Let me take you to dinner. He blinked. You want to take me out? Yeah, she said. I do. Oliver stared at her stunned. You're serious? Very. He hesitated, then sighed. All right, one dinner. Her smile lit up her whole face. Great, Saturday, I'll pick you up. Saturday came, and so did Rowan in a sleek black car that looked expensive, but not flashy. She stepped out wearing a red dress that made Oliver forget how to breathe for a second. I thought I was supposed to be taking you out, he said. I like surprises, she replied, and opened the passenger door for him. They drove into the city, and Oliver's jaw nearly hit the floor when they pulled up to a rooftop restaurant with views that stretched across downtown. You sure about this? He asked quietly. She looked at him. Yes. Inside, everything gleamed gold accents, soft candlelight, a piano playing somewhere in the background. They were seated at a private table near the edge of the terrace, the skyline glittering behind them. Oliver shifted in his seat. I feel like I should have worn a suit. You look perfect, she said without missing a beat. They talked, and for the first time in a while, Oliver let his guard down. He told her about Zayden, about the struggle of raising a kid alone, about working 2 jobs and barely making it. She listened, really listened. When the waiter brought the check, Oliver reached for it out of habit. Rowan stopped him. My treat. He frowned. Rowan. I invited you. I'll fight you over this if I have to. He looked at her, something shifting in his expression. You always get your way. She grinned, most of the time, yeah. And just like that, he laughed. Something was happening, something real. He felt it in the way she leaned toward him when he spoke, the way her eyes didn't flinch when he talked about the hard stuff. And when they stepped into the elevator to leave, she looked up at him, too close. Oliver, she said softly, I really like you. His voice was barely a whisper. I really like you too. And then because it felt right, because it made sense, he kissed her. And the second their lips met, he knew something had changed forever. Oliver hadn't meant to spend the night thinking about her, but by the time Monday rolled around, he'd caught himself checking his phone more times than he cared to admit despite knowing she didn't have his number. That made it worse somehow. The silence wasn't from disinterest, it was chosen, and he didn't know what to make of that. The day passed in a blur of concrete dust and hammer noise, but as he wiped sweat from his neck and pulled off his gloves late that afternoon, a Navy SUV rolled to a stop just beyond the job site's temporary fencing. His pulse jumped before he even saw her step out. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just walked calmly across the gravel in pointed flats that had no business surviving this terrain. When she reached him, she didn't bother with small talk. "I need to show you something," Rowan said. He glanced at the half-loaded truck bed. "Now." "Yes." He studied her face. There was no trace of the playfulness from Saturday night. Her jaw was set, her eyes serious. "I've got Zayden," he said. "Promised him pizza and a movie." She hesitated. "Bring him." "Where are we going?" She looked past him, somewhere far away. "You'll understand when we get there." He didn't like mysteries, but something about her expression told him this wasn't a whim. She wasn't playing a game. He called his sister to watch Zayden for a couple hours, then climbed into the passenger seat. The drive was quiet but not tense. She didn't fill the silence with chatter. She let it sit, and somehow that made him trust her more. After 20 minutes, they turned off the main road onto a long, winding drive lined with cypress trees. At the end of it, a wrought iron gate opened automatically, revealing a sprawling estate behind it. Oliver sat forward. "Whose place is this?" Rowan kept her eyes on the road. "Mine." He stared at her. "You're joking." "I'm not." They pulled up in front of a sandstone mansion with tall windows and ivy curling along the stone. A gardener waved politely as they passed. Oliver didn't speak until they stepped out onto the gravel courtyard, the weight of the silence between them now pressing. "You told me you were in finance," he said. "I am," she replied. "Own Ashford Holdings. My father started it. I expanded it. We manage equity portfolios, real estate ventures, a few international assets." He exhaled sharply, looking up at the towering facade. "Why didn't you tell me?" She turned to him. "Because I wanted you to see me first." "I did." "Not that way, not the way people usually do." He crossed his arms, trying to keep his voice steady. "This changes things." "No, it doesn't," Rowan said. "You're still the man who walked into a stranger's storm without blinking, and I'm still the woman who couldn't stop thinking about him after. I'm not comfortable being someone's project." "You're not," she said immediately. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" he asked. "Because I don't live in a house with its own lake. I fix drywall and pray I don't get called into the principal's office about my kid again. You have a staff, Rowan." She didn't flinch. "I didn't bring you here to impress you. I brought you here because if this is going to be anything real, I can't lie about who I am." He looked away for a long moment, his jaw tight. "I'm not used to people being honest with me." "I figured that," she said quietly. He turned back to her. "And what? You thought it'd be okay once I saw the chandeliers?" "No," she said. "I thought you deserved the truth, that's all." He stared at her, then nodded slowly. "All right." Her shoulders eased just slightly. "Come inside, just for a minute." He followed her through the front doors and into a foyer that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Marble floors, soft lighting, a staircase that curved like a ribbon. But what struck him most wasn't the extravagance, it was the warmth. There were framed photos on the walls, a kid's drawing on the fridge, and a golden retriever that came bounding down the hall like an overexcited toddler. "This is Max," she said as the dog jumped up to greet him. Oliver scratched behind the dog's ears. "He's friendly." "Too friendly." They walked into a sunlit room lined with bookshelves and floor-to-ceiling windows. Rowan pulled a photo from the mantel and handed it to him. It was her, maybe 10 years younger, standing beside an older man in a wheelchair. They were both laughing. "My father," she said. "He passed away last year." He looked at the photo, then at her. "He raised you." She nodded. "After my mom left, yes." He handed the photo back. "You miss him?" "Every day." He didn't say anything, just sat on the edge of the armchair, his hands clasped. I know this is a lot, she said, but I didn't want to pretend anymore. He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know where this leaves us. Rowan stepped closer. It leaves us wherever you want it to. You're not scared I'll walk away. I'm terrified, she admitted, but I'd rather you leave with the truth than stay with a lie. Oliver looked at her, really looked past the wealth, the confidence, the tailored clothes. She wasn't asking for permission. She was offering him a choice. I need time, he said finally. You've got it. He stood, then hesitated. Zayden's gonna ask questions. She smiled faintly. I'm good with questions. He gave a small nod. We'll see. As she walked him to the door, Max followed close behind, tail wagging. Oliver paused on the threshold. This place, it's not what I expected. Neither are you, she said. He looked at her for a beat, then turned and walked out into the cool evening air. He didn't look back, but he also didn't stop thinking about the way her voice had wavered when she said she was terrified. There was something real in that, something that stayed with him long after the gate closed behind him. Rowan didn't reach out again, not the next day, not for the rest of the week. Oliver noticed. He didn't expect her to disappear, but when she did, he realized how much space she'd taken up in his mind. The silence wasn't loud, it was calculated. She was giving him room he'd said he needed, and it made him restless. He tried to move through his routine like nothing had changed, but nothing fit the same. He burned dinner twice, left his gloves at one job site and his tool belt at another. Zayden noticed. Kids always did. You're being weird, Dad, he said one night, legs swinging under the kitchen table while picking the mushrooms off his pizza slice. Oliver leaned back in his chair. Weird how? You stare at the front door like you're waiting for a package, except you didn't order anything. Oliver looked down at his plate. Maybe ordered something really important. You should call her, Zayden said, licking tomato sauce from his fingers. The lady in the red dress. Oliver's head snapped up. You remember that? Duh, Zayden said. She made you smile like you forgot how hard your day was. That night, Oliver didn't sleep. He lay awake listening to the creak of the ceiling fan, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional shuffle of Max's paws on the hardwood above. Rowan had let him see her, all of her, and he'd walked away like he wasn't terrified of regretting it. By morning, he'd made up his mind. He called in late to the job site and swung by his sisters to drop off Zayden. Then he drove. When he pulled into her driveway, the gates were already open. He didn't know if that meant she'd seen him coming or if they were always open now. Either way, it felt like a green light. The front door opened before he could knock. Rowan stood there barefoot, wearing a gray sweatshirt that hung off one shoulder and black leggings. Her hair was pulled back in a loose braid. No jewelry, no gloss, just her. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. I wasn't either, Oliver admitted. But then I realized I don't want to live scared of what might go wrong. She stepped aside. Want coffee? He followed her in, only if it's strong enough to knock me over. She poured 2 mugs with practiced ease, handed him one. They stood in her kitchen, quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that meant something was shifting. I didn't want to push you, she said. I meant what I said. I'd rather you leave with the truth than stay with a lie. I know that now, Oliver said, but it didn't come because of guilt. Rowan's eyes met his. Then why? Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you, and not just because of the house or the car or any of this. He gestured vaguely at the gleaming countertops and the massive windows. Because you make me feel like I'm allowed to want more. Rowan's voice softened. You are. I never had space for that before, Oliver said. Wanting something just for me, it always felt selfish. It's not, she said. It's survival. He took a sip of the coffee. You said you run Ashford Holdings. I do. I looked it up. She raised a brow, and you're on the cover of finance magazines. You're invited to summits in Monaco. You manage more money than I can even picture. Is that intimidating? He shook his head. It's impressive, but no, it just makes me realize how much more I want to understand you. Rowan leaned against the island. Most men either want to be saved by it or run from it. I don't want your money, Oliver said. I want your time. She blinked, then smiled slowly like it surprised her too. You've got it. Later, they sat on her back terrace with coffee refills and Max curled up at their feet. The sun was starting to dip, casting gold over the water. I never told you what I wanted to be before all this, Rowan said, watching the sky. No. I wanted to write musicals. Oliver nearly choked on his drink. Seriously. I was obsessed. I wrote 3 terrible ones in high school. Did they have names? Of course, Midnight Train to Paris was my magnum opus, she said, laughing. It was awful. I don't believe that. It had a tap-dancing detective and a ghost that only sang in German. Oliver let out a full laugh, the kind that cracked something open in his chest. Why didn't you do it? My father got sick. I took over the company. It wasn't even a question. He was quiet for a beat. Do you miss it? Sometimes, she said, but I think I was meant to build something that mattered, even if it wasn't what I planned. And maybe I'll write again one day. Oliver looked out at the water. You should. She turned toward him. What about you? What did you want before everything? He hesitated. I used to draw. You draw? Yeah, he said. Sketches, portraits. I was pretty good. What happened? Life happened. I got good at patching drywall instead. She reached over and took his hand. You're allowed to want both. He didn't pull away. As the last of the sun dipped below the trees, Rowan stood. Come with me. He followed her through a hallway he hadn't seen before, into a room that looked more like an artist's studio than anything else in the house. Skylights, easels, paint-splattered tarps, shelves of books and rolled canvases. I was saving this room for something, she said. Now I know what. He stepped inside slowly, taking it in. This is yours. It's empty, she said, until you fill it. He turned to her, something catching in his throat. I don't know what this is yet, Rowan said, but I know I don't want to lose it. He took a step toward her. Neither do I. Then he kissed her. This time, it wasn't hesitation or impulse. It was the quiet certainty of 2 people who'd seen enough of the world to know when something rare was in front of them. Outside, the sky turned velvet. Inside, their hands found each other without words. And for the first time in a long time, Oliver stopped thinking about what he didn't have and started believing in what he could build. Rowan stood on the far end of the Ashford Foundation ballroom, her fingers wrapped loosely around a glass of sparkling water as her eyes followed Oliver across the room. He looked good in a suit, too good. The navy-tailored jacket hugged his frame perfectly, his tie just slightly loosened as if he'd forgotten he was supposed to be uncomfortable. He was speaking to a board member from one of the education grants they'd funded this year, nodding with that quiet intensity he had when he was truly listening. And he was listening. That was what struck people. Oliver didn't fake interest. He didn't pretend to know more than he did. He asked questions. He remembered names, and that meant more to these donors and partners than any polished speech ever could. Rowan hadn't planned on inviting him to the annual gala. But when the Foundation's new literacy initiative needed a community partner, Oliver had stepped up without hesitation. He'd organized a build for the new learning center, recruited volunteers, even managed to get local suppliers to donate materials. So the invitation had come with purpose. But what happened after it was no longer about purpose anymore? It was about presence. "Your date's a hit," Selene whispered beside her. Rowan's COO and longtime friend, Selene had been watching the same scene unfold. "He's not my date," Rowan said under her breath. "Right," Selene said dryly, "because you just happened to gaze at all the contractors you partner with like they hung the stars." Rowan rolled her eyes. "I'm trying to keep this professional." Selene arched a brow. "Then maybe don't stare at him like he's the last honest man on the planet." Rowan didn't answer, because maybe he was. Across the room, Oliver caught her watching. His expression didn't shift. He just excused himself from the conversation, crossed the floor with slow, deliberate steps, and stopped when he reached her. "You're avoiding me," he said softly. "I'm not." "You were." "Only a little." He tilted his head. "Why?" "Because you look," she paused, "like you belong here." "I don't." She blinked. "I belong with you," he said. "That doesn't mean I belong in these rooms." She searched his face. "Does that bother you?" "I thought it would," he said, "but it doesn't, not if you're standing next to me." A string quartet shifted into a modern ballad. Soft violins wove through the room. "Dance with me," he said. "I don't usually." "Rowan." She set her glass down. They moved to the center of the floor. His hand settled at her waist, hers curled against his shoulder. She didn't think about the crowd, or the eyes, or the whispers she knew were happening behind champagne flutes. She thought about the calloused warmth of his palm and the way he looked at her like nothing else mattered. "I was scared," she said quietly. "I know." "Not of you, of what it would mean to let someone in again." Oliver's fingers brushed her back. "I was too." "But you still came back." "I couldn't not." She looked up at him. "So what now?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Come with me this weekend. I want to show you something." "To where?" "You'll see." They swayed through the rest of the song without speaking, and when it ended, he didn't let go. That Saturday, Rowan found herself standing outside a weathered brick building tucked between a bakery and a closed-down laundromat. The sign above the door read, "Eastview Youth Center." Inside, the walls were being painted a bright shade of green. Children's books were stacked in neat piles, and Oliver, wearing sweats and a baseball cap, was hanging a shelf with Zayden handing him screws one at a time from a plastic bucket. "You did all this?" she asked once they stepped out into the sun. "It was falling apart," Oliver said. "They lost funding years ago, but we had materials left over from the literacy build, and the guys from my crew volunteered time." She turned to face him. "You could have told me." "I didn't want to ask for help." "But I want to help you," she said. "Not just with this, with everything." He looked at her, and for once, she saw hesitation in his eyes. She stepped closer. "You don't have to be strong all the time." "I don't know how to be anything else." "You don't have to know, just let me in." His silence stretched for a long moment. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "What's that?" He handed it to her. It was a sketch, pencil on paper. Her looking over her shoulder, hair falling down her back, caught mid-laugh. "You drew this." "I couldn't sleep." She traced the lines with her eyes. "You're incredible." "I'm rusty." "I want you to have your own studio," she said. "A real one, with light and space and time." "I can't let you buy me things." "I'm not buying you anything," Rowan said. "I'm investing in someone I believe in." He exhaled hard. I know that look, she said. You think accepting help means weakness. I just don't want to lose myself in something that feels too big. Then let's build something new, she said, together on our terms. His gaze dropped to her mouth. You're not walking away from this, are you? I couldn't if I tried. Zayden called from the doorway, waving a juice box at them. Dad, I need help with the hammer again. Oliver smiled, coming, bud. He turned back to Rowan. Stay for dinner. She nodded. I'll bring dessert. That night, they ate on the back porch of his house. Zayden told her about his science project. Max chased a moth until he collapsed in defeat, and when Zayden finally fell asleep on the couch, Oliver carried him to bed with a quiet tenderness that made Rowan's throat tighten. Later, under the soft flicker of porch lights, Oliver turned to her. I love you, he said. She didn't even blink. I love you too. He stepped closer. I didn't think I'd get this again, he said. Not after everything. You didn't get it, she whispered. You chose it, and that's braver than anything. He kissed her, slow and certain, like a man who finally stopped running from the good. The next week, the studio above her garage was cleared out and filled with light. The week after that, the youth center opened with new books, new shelves, and a mural painted by Oliver and Zayden. And the week after that, she asked him to move in. He said yes. When the Ashford Foundation released their next quarterly report, it opened with a quote. Build something that lasts not just for yourself, but with the people who remind you why it matters. It didn't carry a name, but Rowan knew exactly whose words they were. And every night, when Oliver kissed her goodnight and curled her into his side, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Love, when chosen freely, was the greatest kind of wealth. Rain tapped gently against the windows of the art studio as Rowan stepped inside, brushing droplets from her coat. The space had changed in the weeks since Oliver first picked up a pencil again. Canvases leaned against the walls, some finished, others mid-stroke. A large one stood on the easel, half-shaded in charcoal, an abstract swirl of movement that felt like breath caught in motion. She set a thermos on the work table, unscrewing the lid. I brought that tea you like, the one with the weird name I can never remember. Oliver turned from the canvas, charcoal dust on his fingers and a faint streak across his jaw. Dragonwell. That's the one, she said. Sounds like a fantasy novel. He smiled, took the thermos and sipped. Tastes like peace. She stepped closer, eyes drifting to the unfinished piece. This one's different. I think it's the first one that doesn't scare me. She nodded, because it's yours. He set the thermos down. I've been thinking about something. She waited, watching him trace the edge of the canvas with his gaze. I want to open a space, he said. A real one, not just for me, for kids who don't have art in their schools, adults who never got the chance to explore it, somewhere people can create without needing permission. Rowan's breath caught, her heart expanding in her chest. That's beautiful. I was wondering, he said carefully, if the Ashford Foundation might partner on something like that. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the window, watching the way the rain blurred the treetops outside. I'll do you one better, she said. We'll fund the entire thing, and name it after your mother if you'll let us. Oliver turned fully toward her. That's not why I told you. I know, she said, and that's why it matters. I don't want it to be a handout. It's not, it's a promise. You build the vision. I'll build the structure around it, together. He crossed to her, standing close enough for her to smell the oil paint on his sleeves. You mean that? I never say things I don't mean. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. Then I think we're ready. For what? For all of it. That night, after Zayden had fallen asleep with a book still open on his chest, Oliver pulled a small velvet box from the drawer beside his bed. He stared at it for a long time, then walked downstairs, where Rowan was curled on the couch with a blanket and a legal pad of notes for the next foundation meeting. She looked up as he entered. "You're quiet." He sat beside her, the box in his hand. "I've been waiting for the right time." Her eyes dropped to the box, then back to him. "I don't have a speech," he said. "I just know that every part of me wants to build a life with you. Not just the good parts, all of it. The messy, the uncertain, the everyday." Rowan set the legal pad aside. "I didn't grow up believing in forever," he said. "But then you walked into my life like you'd always belonged in it." He opened the box. A ring sat inside, simple, elegant, with a single sapphire surrounded by a band of gold. "Marry me." She didn't cry, she didn't gasp. She just reached for his face and kissed him like he was the only solid thing in a world that never stopped spinning. "Yes," she whispered, "absolutely yes." They didn't tell anyone right away. Not because they were hiding, it just felt like something sacred they wanted to hold close for a little while longer. When they finally did, Zayden's reaction was exactly as expected. "Do I get to wear a suit?" Oliver ruffled his hair. "You'll be the best-looking one there." "I want a bow tie." "You got it." The ceremony was held in the courtyard behind the youth center, the same one Oliver had rebuilt, brick by brick. The foundation had restored the garden, turning it into a lush, living space filled with climbing roses, soft lights, and the sound of the nearby fountain. Rowan wore a gown of soft ivory silk, her hair pinned with a single gold comb. There were no bridesmaids, no groomsmen. Just them, standing in front of the people who mattered. Zayden held the ring box, grinning proudly in his little navy suit and bow tie. As they exchanged vows, the wind picked up just enough to rustle the trees, as if the world was leaning in to listen. "I didn't know what home felt like until you," Rowan said, her voice steady. "But when you look at me, I remember." Oliver took her hands. "You gave me a life I didn't think I deserved, and I promised to spend every day proving you were right to believe in me." They kissed, and the guests erupted in applause. But Oliver only heard her breath against his cheek, her fingers tight in his. Later at the reception, Zayden insisted on giving a toast. He stood on a chair, juice box raised. "I'm glad my dad picked someone cool, and I'm glad she picked us too." Rowan leaned into Oliver, tears in her eyes for the first time that day. The months that followed weren't perfect, but they were real. The art space, named the Marisol Studio, opened with a line out the door and a waitlist 3 pages long. Oliver taught classes twice a week, and on Saturdays, Zayden helped him sharpen pencils and organize paintbrushes. Rowan continued her work with the foundation, but now with a new branch focused on creative equity, making space for voices so often overlooked. They traveled when they could, spent weekends at the lake house Rowan had avoided for years. Oliver taught Zayden how to skip stones. Rowan taught them both how to make pancakes without burning them. One night, under a sky full of stars, Oliver stood on the porch with his arm around her waist. "You ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't been in that parking lot?" She looked up at him. "I don't have to because you were." And that was all that mattered. They built a life not out of perfection, but out of presence, out of love that chose to stay, out of hard work and quiet moments and laughter that came from deep, healed places. And every day they chose each other, again and again. Forever wasn't a promise in the sky. It was a home they carried, hand in hand, always.